Hello and welcome back to Time to Change. And I'm with Henry Miller again. Henry is the founder of Limitless Consulting Solutions. He is an HR expert. And today we're going to be talking about building employee trust. Thank you for joining me, Henry.
Awesome. And thank you for having me on. I enjoy being here, and it's really awesome to talk about employee trust, right?
From someone who's coming as a consultant and an HR expert, what does employee trust mean to you? Just what does that whole concept mean? Let's start there.
Oh man, trust it. I mean, to be honest, that's a loaded question. Like you're asking me like the most loaded question ever. Um, I mean, to be honest with you, trust is the foundation, right, of all relationships, and you hear that, and I think most of us would agree with that. But I don't know if people really internalize that when it comes to work. I think they do in their personal life, with their significant other, their
Yeah.
spouse, their friends, their family. I think they kind of understand that like trust is that foundational level. But for some reason, when people go to work, it's like they miss that. A lot of people tend to miss that piece of it is like, well, you've got to build trust with the people that work with you day in and day out that are just your coworkers, and you got to build trust with your manager and vice versa. That manager's got to build trust with you. Now, how you do it's different with everybody because everybody's got a different level. Like me, I'll trust
Very
you
good.
until there's a reason really not to, right? Like I trust that you're good at your job. I trust that you're here for the right reasons. I trust that you'll never do anything malicious. But I'll tell somebody that like during a feedback session. I trust you to do your job. I trust
Yeah.
you to do this, right? Like how many leaders will sit there and really look somebody in the eye like, I trust your decision making.
That's a right. How how interesting that those three words, I trust you, and the action behind
Behind
actually
it.
showing that you do,
Right.
because it's great that you can say it. And I think the issue kind of is a slightly different. I think
Right.
it's not that leaders aren't saying that, it's they say that and then their actions say something totally different.
And then I say, give me a report or update every afternoon on what you've been working on all day. And you
Yeah.
go, well, do you trust me if you want to micromanage how I'm doing something or when I'm doing it or like what it is? Just let me go get it accomplished, right? If I'm having open enrollment for the organization, I have to go do open enrollment for whatever reason. If you work in HR, my job is to go execute it, bring you the data for the benefits. Like, this is what it's going to cost this year. This is what our projections were. This is how close we were, not close we were. Here's what's probably better for the employees or better for the bottom line. And here's what's better for both parties right here. But would you want to go, well, how far are you along with this? Have you got an update yet? Did you get this done yet? Because that doesn't breed trust. That breeds that you don't really value that person's ability to get you the
Right.
information as soon as they have it, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's actions too. And I know it sounds words. I use words like words of affirmation and actions, and I'm like it ties like to love languages, like when you talk about relationships, right? Everybody's got a different love language in their personal life.
Yeah.
That relates to your work life. But some people are like, you got to show me proofs in the pudding. The words matter to me in time, right? The managers take the time to talk to their people, find out like how are they doing? How are their kids playing softball? Like, are you playing softball this year? Oh, they quit softball. Why'd they do that? You spend more time at work than you do any other place.
The leaders that actually take the time to learn about their people, to understand who they are, what they're doing, why it matters, they're going to be more prepared to help their people grow and thrive. They're going to help their
Yep.
people upskill. They're going to help their
Yep.
people reskill. They're going to help their people move into different positions so that, if there's troubling times and different things have to be adjusted in a company, instead of losing your valuable people that have been with you and dedicated, you can retain them and move them into other areas that they can still thrive and that they will enjoy because you've learned about them as human beings.
Right.
I think that's
And,
fantastic.
and it's interesting, right? Because when you really take it and peel the onion back, it's a really basic, simple thing, right? Like when you go, man, sounds really simple, and you go, it's a little bit more complex when you have a large team and they're all different personalities, and some want you to leave them alone. They don't even want to talk to you. If you call a meeting with them, they're like, oh God, I got to go talk to Henry again.
Yeah, they shut down.
But if you're consistent enough, they know that it comes from a good place, right? And sometimes you have to know that, okay, well, maybe they don't want to talk to me every single week, but I'll just check up on them or check in, rather just say, hey, how are you doing this week? Do you need anything from me? And you have to know that person needs just that one thing. And then there's some people that really do want to have a conversation about like, I really want to develop and grow in the company. How do I do that? What can I do to do that? And then that's your job to go figure it out as the leader. But that trust piece of it is they have to trust you to talk to you about wanting to move up. They have to trust you to want to do a better job, or even tell you when you're wrong as a leader, right? Do your people trust you enough? Because I always ask people, do they trust you enough to tell you that you're not right? Because there's a big trust factor there. If you think you're getting fired, or you think your boss is going to just yell at you, or treat you differently,
Mhm.
then they don't trust you, and they'll never speak up in a room, and they'll let you make a big decision that's not right, or they didn't bother to say, hey, here's some things that maybe you're not looking at. They didn't trust you enough, and you
Nope.
didn't trust them enough to ask the question, like, please tell me this is not the right decision. This is your guys' time to speak to me.
Yeah.
Please help me. But most leaders have a hard time saying, please help me. It's that vulnerability of, please help me make good decisions.
That's
Please help me do this. And people are like, well, I'm supposed to know the answers. I'm like, you're not. You're not going to know them all. None of us know them all. I wish I did. If you knew all the answers, that would be great. You would just kill it in business every day. Every decision you make would be right. It doesn't work that way. And people that have started businesses and failed and done different things know that. They have an edge on
absolutely.
people because they've just failed a dozen times. The military is a prime example. You'll fail 100 times, but you're always given the opportunity to keep doing better and being better, and they keep equipping you to do that. So I kind of take that lens into the sort of the private sector. Even when you talk leadership coaching and how you build trust and teamwork, because those two T's are important. They go together. But I always say, ask yourself, three questions. What are the three things that are going well in my work and in my life? Write them down. And what are the three things that I'm not doing well at that I know are not going well? Write them down. And then I always ask people to come in
I
and
love that.
share it, small group, and go, let's talk about them. Why is this going so well and why is this not? And sometimes, and I always tell them, it can be personal, because your personal life spills into your work life, because that's where you're at the most.
Well,
So
because you're a human being.
yeah,
Because I don't like the conversation of work-life balance. I like the conversation of being a full human being that has
it's
multiple
just
things in
balance.
their life that challenge them and help them grow, and that they understand to create boundaries within their workspace so that they have a life.
And I do, right? And I use the word work life balance, but it's really hard to find the right word. And I always say it's like
Exactly.
balance. It's just like balance in your life in general, right? Because work and life are just all part of your life. Like your kids are part of your life, your family's part of your life. So it's really just finding the harmony within your life and finding out what works for you. That's why, like, no one can tell you what that looks like. If you think you need to be in better shape or you need to do whatever, well, then you have to modify your whole life. That means you got to eat better when you're at work. That means you got to eat better when you're at home. That means you're going to move a little bit more throughout the day. Well, that's your whole life, right? So it's not a balance of like, oh, you got a healthy eating balance. No, it's just life. You got to look at it as a life change, not
Yeah,
necessarily that. But I always tell leaders, when you try to talk to them, when you're trying to build trust with your team, or that somebody comes to you and says that person just doesn't, I can't, I just don't know how to connect with them. Sometimes it's the real simple answer of, well, what are you doing to connect with them? Well, ask them how they're doing. They just never say anything. I'm like, well, do you make an appointment with them and just say, hey, every Friday I'd like to sync with you specifically, because I see a lot of potential in you, and I really would like to know what you want to be doing long term, in the organization. That sends a different signal than just, hey, how you
absolutely.
doing? It's
Yeah,
intentional. I'm giving you an hour. I'm going to shut my phone off. I'm going to shut
yeah.
my notifications off on my computer, because we're guilty. All of us are guilty of trying to talk and clicky clack at the same
Click, click,
time.
click. Yeah,
Yeah, because people do it. You'll go and just sit with your boss, and you'll see them in there just typing away
yeah,
while they're trying to talk to you, and you're like, "Are you paying me any attention?"
yeah.
You know, or you can ask them a random phrase just to see if they say yes. You're like, "Oh, cool, I'm getting a raise. That's awesome." But I do think that trust level is built over time, and it's not something you can just do once. And I know in a world that we live
Absolutely.
in, quick fixes. I want to just have this one conversation and we just connect and that's it. I'm like, well, it's not like
It's not
you're
like that.
meeting somebody and you just instantly connect with them for the first time. That's not going to happen with every employee you have. It's just impossible. Some people you are going to meet, you're going to connect, and you're going to naturally just have a flow. And
Yep.
those are some of the best teams ever, when everybody's just that synergy is just there. But you have to build it and foster it and constantly nurture it. It's no different than any other relationship in your life. If you don't nurture your relationship with your spouse or your significant other, or your best friend, or your family, it's all the same. And that's kind of how I take leadership approach, is like, it's how you build relationships with your kids. Do you take time and spend with them? Well, yeah. Well, you're at work 9 hours a day minimum, maybe 10 to 12. How
Yeah. So
intentional
what
are
are
you with
you
the
doing?
people? What are
Yeah.
you
What
doing?
what does that time look like, and what are you doing, and what are you saying? So I love how you talk about what being intentional about the language you use, being intentional about the time commitment, and being intentional about asking the questions and listening. Because I think leaders as a whole have a hard time with the time factor and with actually
Right.
listening. They're like you said, trying to do something while I'm part of this
If I
conversation, but I
if I
need to
had a
be
dollar,
present. Yeah.
if I had a
So
dollar for every manager that I've talked to, just in different companies that I've consulted for or in my day-to-day job, like that just say I don't have the time, and you go, okay, well let's talk about time management. And then
yeah,
sometimes I share my schedule, and people think that it's like, oh my gosh, how do you do that? And I'm like, it's something I've been doing for a really long time. So I fine tuned if I want to work out and I want to eat healthy, yeah, I got to meal prep. Yes, I have to work out earlier in the morning. Otherwise, it'll get late and I won't do it. Everything else becomes a priority. So you got to know yourself well enough to know, yeah, I'm not going to go at 7 o'clock at night unless somebody's dragging me. So I need to go earlier in the morning, which means you get up a little earlier,
yeah,
where I want to have 5 minutes or 10 minutes with my son in the morning where we can just talk about whatever. Well, I got to be intentional. I mean, on the ride to school or like when we park, I need to, have that time just to talk to him and not be like playing on my phone or, working or trying to do some other stuff, right? It's that intentionality with what you're doing at that moment in time,
yeah,
and then looking for places where you're wasting time. Like, are you not empowering your team enough? I always ask managers that, are you not empowering them to do the work? And then you kind of just supporting and being that, you know, you're lifting them up versus you're trying to do everything and micromanage everything to the point where you don't have any time because it's self-inflicted in most cases.
So
Um,
we've talked about, the language, we've talked about listening, we've talked about how important it is in the workspace. Is there any final comment that you want to give as we wind this down? What can leaders do initially to kickstart building employee trust?
the first thing you can do to kickstart employee trust is really it's kind of it's a double-edged sword really. One of it is get to know yourself internally, like really get to know you and get to know how you react to things, because that is what is going to either hinder you from building trust or help you build trust. So you have to really look at yourself in the mirror really hard and go, what am I doing really great and what am I not doing really great? That's why I like to ask
Yeah,
those questions, because it takes it to a personal level. That's that first step. And then I think the rest of it is truly making that foot forward and being intentional. And I think sometimes it means saying, look, I know I've been in managing this team for a long time, and I think I probably haven't done some things I should have. Um, and it has never been intentional, but it's always been about meeting the business metric. I think
yeah,
I need to make you guys more of a priority, and I'd like to do that. What do you think I can do for the team at large to do that better, right? And it takes a big, I mean, I'm telling you, I've done it, and it takes a lot. You're swallowing your ego, you're swallowing your pride because you just
yep,
think you're just really good at what you're doing. Your metrics look good, so you got to be doing a good job. Doesn't do you any good to meet all those metrics if everyone that works for you doesn't really care much for you, and you're the talk of the water cooler, but you've
yeah,
got all these good metrics and people think you're this phenomenal leader, but really all your team members are just like, man, when is this person going to promote and leave? um, they're so mean to us, or they never talk to us, and they don't, I have no upward career trajectory in the company. Nobody cares about me. It's just about what I can do for them.
right,
So I think that first step is really getting acquainted with yourself, and then being willing to go in and say, look, I think I may have like not taken time and then being intentional with getting to know everybody, and leading you in a way that makes sense. And it starts by setting the example yourself, right? Are you making time for all the things that
that's
you're
right.
telling them to make time for?
That's fantastic. I love that. I love how we've hit on all the points that I love when we talk about employee trust. So thank you very much, Henry Miller, for joining us today. This has been Time to Change, and we've been talking about building employee trust. Join us next time.